Hello everybody, welcome back to the farm. Today we're going to talk about some interesting variations of the RH-36 combat knife, including this variation. So if that interests you, stick around. Alright everybody, welcome back to the shop. So as promised, I'm going to cover this variation of the RH-36 fighting knife. Took a little break from farm duties, came into the shop, and wanted to show you something I think is really cool. Now, I'll just cut right to the chase. This variant of the RH-36 is made in Sheffield, England. I haven't seen very many of these. I've maybe a half a dozen in my life. I picked this one up because it was a good price. But let me show you the markings. So it says RH-36 PAL, right? And underneath, Sheffield, England. So that's pretty interesting, because it clearly shows that it has the PAL factory RH-36 marking, but instead of being marked made in the USA, like your standard PAL RH-36, underneath the oval it says made in USA. And you'll see the stamping style is a little different, a little larger, and frankly a little clearer. Now, what's the history of the English-made RH-36? To be honest with you guys, I don't know. It's kind of a mystery. Now, these knives do turn up in Europe, and of the half a dozen or so knives that I've seen, half of them were in Canada. So I've seen 3 different knives like this come out of Canada, and this knife I purchased from a collector in Canada. Now, I don't know what that means. I don't know if these were issued to British military forces at all, and I don't think they were. And the reason I say that is because there is no broad arrow acceptance mark on this knife at all. So I was spun a great tale about a Canadian guy who went to fly in bombers out of England during World War II, and he carried one of these Sheffield-made RH-36 as well. The British were very serious about marking every single piece of equipment with a broad arrow, in order to show that it was accepted in the British military service. Even commercial-ish knives that were made in Sheffield, England, and issued to different parts of the British military, even smaller knives carried a broad arrow stamp. So, and this knife does not. So, it's interesting. The other knives I've seen, one was in Belgium, one was in France, and one was in Germany. Now, I don't know what that means. You don't see these very often in the U.S. For whatever reason. But let's take a look at the knife itself. One of the things that I like is it has the standard red-black spacing, right, that you find on RH-36s. But between the red and the black and the leather, there are brass washers, which I think is pretty cool. It looks very nice. Again, I don't think that anyone would have used brass on a knife handle during the Second World War because brass was a highly desirable defense industry material used to make munitions. So I just can't see them using brass on a knife like this during the war. Also, this is probably the most interesting part of this knife. Now, what you see here with the brass nut securing the pommel to the tang, this is a Sheffield, England signature kind of patent, right? And again, it's a brass nut on a steel tang in an aluminum pommel. It's really cool. It's interesting, and I'm glad I was able to pick this one up. So, for just a second, let's compare them side by side. The U.S. made RH-36 with this Sheffield, England RH-36. I mean, the first thing that I notice is the difference in the shape of the pommels, right? Again, you have red and black spacers between the metal and the leather handles, but you do not, obviously, see brass washers on the American knife. Also, the American knife is pinned, right? Unlike the British knife. It's an interesting piece of equipment. Again, the other thing that you can't help but notice, it just jumps right out at you, is the fuller in the blade. So the fuller on this RH-36, PAL manufactured RH-36 from World War II, is machined. Okay, that's a machined fuller. This is a uniform size. I can't think of a single American knife that I have seen that doesn't have the fuller machined like this one. And the Sheffield fuller seems to be hammered. Right? It is not machined. Can you see that? I could be wrong. Maybe it's machined much smaller. But the way the ends end tells me that this is a hammered fuller and not a machined fuller. You can see the difference, right? So, fascinating little piece of equipment. I hope somebody out there knows more about these than I do. Again, I found in research a comment that said that the PAL Knife Company sold their blanks to a company in Sheffield, and these were assembled as hunting knives after the war. I have no way to prove or disprove that at all. It seems a little strange, considering that it's clearly marked PAL RH-36. So if they were going to sell it to a Sheffield maker, why would they have to have a special marking for the PAL RH-36? You know, because even though it says PAL RH-36, this is a different stamping. So, I don't know. Kind of a mystery. I like these kind of mysteries. I hope somebody out there knows more about this knife than I do. In the meantime, I'm going to wipe it down real good and put it away in my box or boxes of interesting knives. So, now on to the second interesting knife. So this here is also a PAL RH-36. You can see it's extremely clean, right? It's in very, very good condition. It has the Parkerized blade, which is a late war version, a late war signature on these knives. Has the steel guard, red and black washers between the leather handle and the metal, right? But the pommel on this one is shaped differently. It's shaped more like the Western style pommels, Western Cutlery Company knives. Now, it could be modified, I suppose, but it just doesn't seem like it if you look at what's going on around it, right? Including the shellac that was originally placed on these leather handles at the factory. Again, PAL RH36 Parkerized blade in really, really good condition. Also, the sheath is in beautiful condition. You rarely see this knife in an original sheath in this condition. I have some other sheaths that I can show you, and they all have variations, but they're all also far more worn, right? They have the rivets. This is right hand, one is a left hand. Very interesting. But I've never seen another PAL RH36 with this pommel. I've never seen one, and that's why I had to have this one. So maybe somebody else out there, one of you guys, sees this video and you go, oh yeah, I've seen that before, I have one of those. If so, please let me know down in the comments. Any details that you have about it are welcome. Again, let's look at the fuller, right? So this is a late war knife. It has a machined fuller, right? But you'll notice that it's very close to the edge up here, right? It's not quite so close to the edge on this side. But compared to a shiny blade, the fullers are the same size, but they're slightly different locations. So, again, very interesting knife. And I'm glad I could share these with you today. Let's see if I can stack some of them up here. So these two are American-made knives, obviously. And they're stamped RH36. So I also have this knife, which is clearly, by looking at it, with the pin pommel and the spacers and the type of fuller, an American-made knife, right? Except this one bears no markings at all. Exactly why that is, I don't know. They're not extremely rare with no markings. You do encounter them from time to time. And then here we have our UK counterpart. It seems just a tiny bit fancier, except for the fuller. Hey, thanks for joining me, ladies and gentlemen. I will also add some pictures of pre-war Remington RH36s from the Remington Arms Factory, the Remington Arms Company. They were beautiful. You'll see in the pictures. These are far more utilitarian, not quite as beautiful, but in my mind, still extremely interesting. When you go around picking up variations of something that's extremely common, it probably tells you that this might be a sickness. So, so thanks for joining me, and if you enjoyed it, please give me a thumbs up. Share it also with your other knife enthusiast friends, and there's a lot of knowledge out there floating around that's not in books and videos and so forth, and I'm willing to hear everybody's information. So please share it, and maybe somebody else has some more information. on these weird variants. And God bless America. Thanks for watching.